Now I'll start with this picture, and I drew this picture when I was 6 years old. And one of my earliest memories of being 6 was being on stage in Kuching, and I was wearing my grandmother's headgear, my grandmother's beads, my grandmother's beaded belt, and a black costume. And it's the traditional costume of my father's community called the Kelabit. And I remember that night really, really clearly because my dance step, it went like this. I had to step to the right, and then step to the left, and then step to the right, and step to the left. And I was holding this carved wooden pole. So I was doing that, and I was supposed to do that for 16 bars of 8 counts, and then do a little twirl, and then bow. So I was doing that. I was stepping to the right, stepping to the left, stepping to the right, and then I missed that 16-bar count, and then I just bowed. So that was essentially my dance steps. But ever since then, I've never stopped dancing, being a performer, and also now teaching the traditional dance of the Kelabit community. Years later, only just a few years ago, I was talking to an auntie, and she said to me, Alena, you know girls now, they don't dance like we used to dance. And I said, oh, what do you mean? Was your dance different? She says, no, you girls, you know the steps. You know how the dance goes. It's a very graceful dance. It's called the dance of the hornbills. And it's a very slow dance. So I asked her, what do you mean, auntie? What do you mean we don't dance like you girls used to dance? And she said, when we were younger, we used to be in the longhouse. And at night, we used to dance just for entertainment. And we would be sitting on the ruai, which is the veranda in the longhouse. And it would all be dark, everything was silent, and only one girl would dance, so we would take turns to dance. And she said, you knew a good dancer was a good dancer when a girl stood up, and she danced so gracefully, so gracefully. It was as if she was summoning spirits from the earth through her body, and it just flew out of her. And everyone who was watching would always be in awe of this dancer, in awe of the grace of this dancer, and almost in a trance. So when I heard this, I was very intrigued because obviously back then there were no videos of dancers. So I kind of took it out of curiosity and also a challenge to myself to try and see what she meant. So what I did is I went back home and I kind of deconstructed what I knew about dance. I forgot how to count, count steps of a dance, count to beat, to rhythms. I learned to not really care what the audience thinks of me. And a few years ago, or a few months after that, I learned how to connect to my inner essence. So I do feel that I've managed to connect to an inner self, that when I dance, there's something that just flows out of me. Now, the Kelabits, we were musical people, but we've lost a lot of it now. And there's this one old Kelabit chant, and it goes something like this. Unila galata guang, muyuta dopian, niar kami ngarang. Unila galata guang, muyuta dopian, niar kami ngarang. And that basically means, watch us dance. So over the last 2 years, I've kind of taken this as a metaphor for my life. Watch us dance. And for me, that means always being in tune with who I am, having a certain kind of self-awareness and self-confidence, and translating that into everything that I do. So I thought I would share with you today how I take that metaphor through my life. So a question that I keep on getting lately is, Alena, what do you do? And I get this question from like my dad down to people I've just met. Alena, what do you do? And when I explain what I do, they ask me, how do you do all of that? So first of all, I'll just share with you a background of where I've come from. This is Long Peluan. Long Peluan is actually nearer to the Indonesian border than Long Banga is. Long Banga was shared with you on a map before this. And it's a birthplace of my father. Now, I'm part of a non-profit called Teach for Malaysia. Teach for Malaysia is part of a global movement that is out there to end education inequity. And I'm on the management side of this non-profit. And why I work there is mainly because of my dad and my family. When I was a little girl, I used to, and please tell me if you guys did this as well. So I used to hate going to school, sometimes even faking sick or trying to fake sick, but basically always whine about going to school. And my dad, he would say, Alena, you know, when I was 10 years old, not even 10, when I was 7 years old, I used to walk 10 days to get to school in the jungle. Over those 10 days, they had to carry their food on their backs for 10 days, enough water for them. They had to build shelters for themselves every night and get to school. And he said, I can drive you 10 minutes to school, and so don't complain about it. And my dad is the first of, my dad's generation is the first of the Kelabits to kind of finish education, or sorry, a formal education system and get jobs for themselves in the cities. And a lot of my family is still, they face the challenge of either having access to education and to schools, and if they do have access, then it's a question about quality education. And this is a problem in Sarawak, yes. It's a challenge all over Malaysia, but all over the world as well. And I know that education is the solution or the cure to a lot of our problems. So my own experience of education is that I went through the Malaysian education system, so I have 12 A's in memorizing, very good memorization skills. I then went to university in England, where I found it actually a huge challenge to be able to express myself, to express what I thought about issues, and it came to a realization to me that there is something that needs fixing here, right? So anyway, I went to business school, graduated, came back to KL, worked in a management consulting firm. I'm just going to gloss over that because that's the boring bit. I was 2 years working in KL in management consulting, but I was never really happy or fulfilled. And after a long, long time thinking about it, and a long, long time trying to make what was the hardest decision of my life, which actually in hindsight should have been the easiest decision of my life, it was to leave and go to art school. So I went to art school. I was the oldest kid in a foundation class of 17-year-olds. I had, this art school was in Singapore, so I had kind of swapped my, nice office clothes for a hoodie and ripped jeans and Converses every day. I had left a nice apartment in KL City, and I was renting the cheapest room in the government flat above a kidney dialysis center in Singapore. My 1 minute commute to work in KL turned to a 45-minute commute in Singapore on public transport. But I had never, ever, ever been happier. And I remember one Instagram post that I posted at the start of this was, I have been studying lines for 12 hours nonstop, lines, and I could not be happier. My whole world is, a view of lines now. But what's more important at art school is that we did not learn technical skills. I did not learn how to draw, I did not learn how to paint per se. I learned all the soft skills, and those are things like observation skills. How do I see things? How can I be in tune with society? How am I aware of social issues? Who am I myself? Where have I come from? And what does that mean when I relate to each one of you? There was one of my favorite assignments actually was to go home and write 2,000 questions. And I was like, write 2,000 questions about what? Like about art? About what? And my lecturer goes, no, just write questions, any question that you have. And so basically through art school, I really, really learned to deconstruct everything that I knew, to question every single thing that people posed to me. Even when we were set homework, we had a lot of work. And I remember once we were set something like 40 pieces to finish in 1 week. And I was like, no, that's impossible. And our lecturer encouraged us to kind of question it, you know? And if you can question things he says, then fine. You can do 20 pieces in 1 week. So basically, always questioning things, deconstructing what you knew, that is really the value that I got at art school. So alongside that kind of institutionalized education that I got, I was also very, very lucky across the course of my life to get education from my elders. So at the age of 14, I learned the sape, and the sape is this lute instrument that you see. This is me with my teacher last year, Matthew Ngau. Matthew Ngau is from the Kenyah people, and he's recently been conferred as living heritage in Malaysia. He's an amazing guy, really, really humbled to be learning under him. I've been learning the sape now for 12 years, and when we learned, we were actually, when I say we, it was my cousins and I, so 6 of my girl cousins and I, we were the first girls to openly play the sape and to perform it. So girls couldn't even touch the sape before, it was a taboo. And we were the first formal students of Uncle Matthew. And at the time, it was really, really fun to be playing this instrument. We would be like traveling around, playing it. But I think only now do I realize how big a deal it was, because it was an instrument that was dying out. It was a real risk of dying out. But now you can see that there's a real interest in people picking it up again. These are some of my pieces, and there was a time that I went through where I was painting older women. So these are old women from the Kelabit community. And why I paint them is because when I was younger, I had quite a special relationship with them, because my cousins and I, we went out to the old ladies and we went to document the songs that they were singing, the old Kelabit songs that they were singing. But these Kelabit songs, they had only been remembered by a handful of women in the longhouses, and that is because when Christianity came in, a lot of their old songs were considered not suitable for their new belief. So we went back, we learned these songs from old women, and I still do this today, and unfortunately it's a language that I don't really understand, but I still think it's important for me to share these songs with you. So we learned this one song, it's called the Ulin, U-L-I-N, and Ulin means love song, literally translated. So we were learning this song and we would sing it on stage in front of world music crowds and at functions. And then we had a performance here in Miri, and Miri is where a lot of the Kelabits live and come from. And that's always really daunting, right? So we presented this song to them, and afterwards, some of the aunties or the elders came up to our moms and were like, oh, these little girls shouldn't be singing this song because it's got elements of love affairs, it's got elements of like animal sacrifice in it, and these young girls just shouldn't be singing it. And one of our moms turns around and says, well, these kids listen to MTV anyway, so what's the difference, you know? This is a painting that I did last year, and it's a painting of Pahin. Pahin is from the Penang community. And who here knows what the Penang community are? So the Penang are, they used to be nomads, living in the jungles of Borneo, and now a lot of them are very much settled in longhouses. So Long Beruang is the village that's next to Long Peluan, and this is Pahin and her sister. And this thing that she's showing me in the photograph is called a satang. And I went to visit them earlier this year, and we were sitting inside their house, and their house is literally, you know, the size of this stage, and that's where they do everything. That's where they cook, that's where they not harvest their rice, it's where they keep their rice, it's where they had a little owl sitting in the corner, it's where they do their weaving, everything's in that space. So we were sitting there and I saw this thing hanging from the wall, and she went down and picked the satang off the wall, kind of dusted the dust and cobwebs off it, and she started playing. Now the satang is a really, really strange instrument, but it's really, really haunting. It's made up of 4 strings just carved out of the bamboo, and I do not understand the tuning. It just doesn't make any conventional sense to me. And she starts playing this song, so it's just 4 notes, and she just starts playing it. It's nice rhythm, there's no lyrics to it. And then she's done, she puts it down, and she says, my father taught me that song. It means sometimes we're here, sometimes we're there, sometimes we'll go somewhere else, and the world is ours to discover, something along those lines. And I just looked there and kind of had this realization that the elders in my community and the communities around them, they have gone through so much transition in one lifetime. In my own longhouse, in about 20 years, I've seen it go from having no electricity to having electricity, eating on the floor to eating on the tables, cooking over the fireplace to having gas stoves now. And I just cannot imagine the transition that these old people have gone throughout their lifetime, from the time of headhunting right up to now. And it's something that has really kind of stuck with me and helped me to question how we deal with transitions and how we move through life. So when people ask me, what do you do? I always kind of take a deep breath now, and I can't even do it now. I do a lot of things every day. So I'll take you through kind of my almost daily schedule. So I'd wake up in the morning, I'd do a little bit of painting, and then I'd have breakfast. And then I'd get to the Teach for Malaysia office in KL, do some project management, do some kind of strategizing stuff, work with some awesome people there. And then I come back, and by 6 o'clock, I start painting again. And if it's a good night, I will paint until about midnight or 1 a.m. On other nights, I teach the SAPE, so I have SAPE students now in KL. I'm dealing with art clients maybe. On Wednesday nights, I do SAPE research, or I'm listening back to tracks that I've recorded from the old ladies in the longhouse, trying to remember these words and trying to interpret them on my own. And I guess a lot of people give me labels. So sometimes people call me an artist, some people call me a musician, some call me a performer, social entrepreneur, strategist, manager, teacher. And honestly, I never feel comfortable with having these labels, because I just feel like that these are boxes that society has given their own definitions to. And I'm part artist, I'm part teacher, I'm part this and I'm part that, but I'm just me. And what I realize is that we all actually know what we are. It's all the things that we've been through, it's all the experiences that we've had, it's what our interests are. But somehow when we go through institutions and we go through life, we carry a lot of social weight and social noise with us. And I think just talking to you here today, as some of you will probably graduate either this year, next year, in the next few years, I really, really hope that you can kind of find who you are, rediscover your core, because you know what it is already. And so when I bring you back to the metaphor of dancing, and this is my dance through life, dance doesn't always have to be happy, it's just what makes me flow and how I'm connected to who I am and what my essence is and what's important to me. So I challenge all of you guys to find your dance. When you find your rhythm, there are other people who have the same rhythm who you'll find on the way as well. And once you can do that, once you really, really connect with yourself and find your core, rediscover your core, it's already there. I trust you, it will be amazing. Thank you.